Yes.
Got it.
Well, there we go. Welcome, everybody. My name is Reverend Jeff Doucette. I'm the minister at Enniskillen United Church, and I have some colleagues here with me today who are going to help me reflect on a new creed as part of our looking at a new creed during this time of Lent. So what I'm going to do is just ask you briefly to introduce yourselves. So, and where you're from?
I'm Christopher White, and I'm the minister at Kedron United Church in Oshawa.
I'm Wanda Stride, and I'm the minister at Trinity St. Andrew's United Church in Brighton, Ontario.
And I'm Michelle Brotherton, and I'm the minister at St. Paul's United Church in Bowmanville.
You or me next, Evelyn.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'm Evelyn McLachhlan. I'm with retired ministers, and I live in Nobleton, and which is 2 exits north on the 400 of Canada's Wonderland.
Do you hang out there a lot, Evelyn?
Unfortunately or fortunately, no. I've only been once in my life.
Me too, 1986, to hear Bruce Coburn.
Nice.
I'm Don McLean. I'm the minister at Norwood United Church and St. Andrew's United Church Westwood, a community I invite you all to hold in prayer this weekend as we hold the funeral on Sunday or Saturday afternoon for Barb Sherwin, who was like the fire in the engine of Norwood United Church. And it'll be our first big in-person gathering since, well, in 2 years, and our first in-person gathering since before Christmas.
Wow.
Thank you. So we're going to chat a bit about a new creed today, but Don, you were telling me that your dad seemed to have been involved around the time that a new creed was being put into place. So if you could really share a little bit of that. And I'm going to share the screen and bring up a new creed. There we go.
Sure. Thanks, Jeff. Yes, indeed. My dad was on what was called the Committee on Christian Faith, which met in the 1960s. So I was alive at the time, but I have no memory of the time, and certainly wouldn't have been interested in anything they were doing at the time. But yes, my dad was on the committee that ended up, amongst other things, writing a new creed. It was at the instigation of the Executive of General Council, who thought the United Church, like other fellow denominations around the world, were formulating new statements of faith, and I actually have a file somewhere in the house that has my dad's notes, and I've been looking for it. And I'm afraid it's in a bin. So I'll talk about what I remember looking at. And if it was in this house, it's still in this house. But if it was in my mother's residence that I remember looking through a box that had this information, I told her, this should be in the archives, and maybe that's where it is. So it could be in a corner of the basement over there, or it could be in the archives. If it's in a corner of the basement over there, it will get to the archives. So I've read and shuffled through files from the time that the committee was meeting. Some of it's handwritten, and it's really interesting, and I can speak to that in a moment. Another person that was on the committee, who I knew as a child, and who died tragically way too early. He died in 1971 or 72, and that was Donald Mathers, who at the time of the writing of the new creed, or the formulation of a new creed, which of course was in a form before this one. It was in 1980 that the language was changed to become inclusive. It began initially, man is not alone, he lives in God's world. So it was third person. And then it became in the first person plural and inclusive in 1980. And I think there was a pasted in creed in all of the red hymn books that I remember, and it had a little asterisk at the bottom that said it had been amended by the action of General Council in 1980. So one of the interesting things about having a theologian, so Donald Mathers was the professor of systematic theology at Queen's at the time. And one of the benefits of having theologians on the committee was the dialogue that was possible between theologians of different traditions. And so one of the things in the file I can't find is a letter, a reply, because the committee sent out drafts of the creed to theologians of different Christian traditions for comment. So the Roman Catholic point of view was not represented by an ecclesiastical body of the Roman Catholic Church, but by a theologian of the Roman Catholic Church, whose name was Gregory Baum, and who taught in Ottawa. And one of the things I read that I was most interested in the draft is so Gregory Bauman's influence on this creed is direct, because what the creed lacked that he looked at and responded to was anything along the line, it ended to proclaim Jesus crucified and risen, period. And Gregory Baum came back to say, well, God is judge as well. And so light goes on over the United Church Committee, and look at that, and look at what comes. And so I find that an interesting tidbit that the committee did its ecumenical homework in a time when ecumenism was on the rise. I think we've fallen away from that somewhat. There's influence from the United Church of Christ and their statement, and in fact, the statement of the United Church of Christ in the service book that the United Church of Canada produced also had the United Church of Christ statement of faith from the time. And it's interesting to look at this, and you go to New Zealand and you find the United Church of Canada's statement of faith is in resources of churches in New Zealand and in the United States and in other places, and I don't know if that's true of non-English speaking places around the world. Now, I have a pastoral moment that I want to share with you, and it could be one of the things that was produced is a little booklet called Creeds. And it's in this booklet that was produced in about 1968. This is a reprint from 1975. It talks a bit about the influences on this from different Christian traditions. A pastoral moment was many years ago. We were having a study group talk about something, and we were talking about the Apostles' Creed. Also, around page 918 or 20 or of Voices United, and a lovely person named Phyllis talked to me afterward. This wasn't in public. This was a little private question. Do you think? She said, do you think God minds when I have to cross my fingers when I say certain lines in the Apostles' Creed? And I said, you too? and she just breathed a huge sigh of relief. And for me, I don't have to do this. I don't have to do that. When I say or hear or in the past have sung the words of a new creed, I don't have to do that. I have to find myself, though, in a more uncomfortable place than I do with either the Nicene Creed or the Apostles' Creed, neither of which makes a moral demand of me.
Yeah. Okay.
And
well,
that's the thing. That's the thing about. Sorry, Jeff. I'm going to shut up now, having said the most important thing about the creed to me, is that this in creedal form are the words of Micah that we love, Micah 6:8, and that if you ask our church, if you ask the individuals in our church across the country what their most important piece of scripture to them, it's Micah 6:8. And, you know, that's why we love to sing those words as well. What does the Lord require of you? What does the Lord require of you? And it's in this. So there, I'm done.
Okay, well,
now.
that's kind of a good segue. Thank you, Don, into just doing a roundabout here with the others, just to have a chance, kind of freestyle. What are some of these words, images, phrases coming out, or whatever it is you want to say about our creed to share with our folks listening?
So I'll just pick up on Don's comments, because for me, every time I say the new creed, it's we are called to be the church, and it lays out what that means for us. I find sometimes with our faith, we try to make it too complex. We try to make it, in some ways, heady. And what the creed calls us to do is to live that faith. We're to celebrate God's presence, to live with respect in creation, to love and serve others, to seek justice, resist evil. And so I know with confirmation classes, when we're talking about what does it mean to be a person of faith, it's that section that I draw their attention to and say, if you start to wonder what it is we're supposed to be doing as a community of faith, it's right there. In some ways, I think it's the mission statement of our church in easy to get our head around language. And so for me, that's always an important piece. But I also think the "we are not alone," that book ends it. We start by saying that we are not alone, and we end by saying we are not alone. And we offer gratitude for that. And now more than ever, I think our world needs to be reminded that we're not alone.
Could I jump in, because Michelle just reminded me of something that I had thought of right away when you sent out your invitation, Jeff, and it's the deathbed words of John Wesley. The best is God is with us. Apparently, or reportedly, the words of John Wesley on his last words.
So I was taught that a new creed, we were supposed to write our faith statement for each generation. That was what the United Church committed to in Union in 1925. And we haven't really done that, but that it had been a while. It had been more than 20 years. And this was in response to the Time magazine reflecting like God is dead and the whole God is dead era. And that was why it started with "We are not alone." Who knows where the truth actually is? And, maybe this was just the standard, pull the theologians together and write a creed. But that's what I was told. And that's why the "We are not alone" is really like, we have to make sure people know this. Mm-hmm. But as Michelle just said, and as Don was saying, the "We are not alone" is every single funeral that I do. I quote some part of a creed because of the hope that's in here. Like, we're not alone. This is God's world, the humility in that, but the hope in that. And then the in life and death and life beyond death. I mean, there's just so many beautiful nuggets. It's such beautiful, concise writing that says so much for us.
Mhm.
So we're not a creedal church, right? In the sense that a creed lays out a set of beliefs. Here is our, to be part of us, this is what you are affirming you believe. So if you look, as I was just checking, if you look at the Apostles' Creed and the Nicene Creed, it says, I believe, or we believe, right? That's not what we say here, right? We're not saying that. We're not affirming a set of beliefs. We are affirming a way of life in terms of how it is we are to live as the church. And I think that is a very significant difference and a wonderful difference, because it also gives us the flexibility to adapt it to as our world changes. You can't change the Nicene Creed. You can't change the Apostles' Creed. I mean, unless there's another huge ecumenical council, right? Those things aren't, you can't change them. United Church can't change those. But this, as we have, is a living document. And to me, that's the thing. There will be more, there'll be another addition to this. I don't know when it's going to be or what it will be, but it's a living document of the church about how we are to live and what we affirm rather than what we believe. So we affirm we are not alone. And to me, that's right there. That's the one that I keep coming back to, and for me is so key. That affirmation that we are not alone. And in the isolated time in which we live, the frightening times in which we live, I think that's an incredibly powerful statement.
I was at General Council in '92 when we voted on expanding the creed to include to live with respect in creation. So I got to vote and I voted in favor. But wow, what a discussion around the line, especially the word in creation. I never would give English such a look at, but it was pretty incredible. So I felt very good every time we say it. I'm going, yeah, I was there. That was me. But I have used this primarily when we have communion, because I believe it's something that unites us, brings us together, and is a bit confessional as well. And of course, as a couple of you have stated, with confirmation classes, and they usually never know it. And I'm a nasty minister because I ask them to pretty much memorize it, and they don't like it. But the reason is so that they will have that to fall back on, and it will come back to them at moments in their life, I hope. And in doing that, it then dawned on me, because I would also cut it up and then toss it out on the floor, and now it was like a big puzzle, so now they had to put it in the right order. It's Trinitarian, and it hadn't really dawned on me. But you begin with God's world, then come in Jesus, works in us and others by the Spirit, God's presence, Jesus crucified and risen, in life and death, where the Spirit is. And, so it keeps becoming new again. And as you've all said, just the comment, we are not alone. We live in God's world. And I've had some interesting discussion with my husband around who has created and is creating, because a lot of people would say God made the world, that's it, it's done. Well, there's creation, and I take it to mean the renewal each year, as spring comes, and as people begin to discover who they are. That's the creation, and God is with us through all of that. And it's as Don has said, it's a call to mission, to action. It's the justice to celebrate, to live with respect, to love and serve others, to seek justice, resist evil. And boy, does that ever get into some great discussion with the confirmands as well as some adults as to what that means to seek justice and resist evil. So it's been, I find it very powerful. And I also think, yeah, that's where I'll stop.
I'm, as you know, I'm coming from the Catholic Church a few years back. And so the main staples for us were the Apostles' Creed and the Nicene Creed. And it was rare I used the Nicene Creed because for me, that was as dusty and crusty as you could possibly get. It just did not feel to be any life. All I could imagine was just the church, but in the form of the British Parliament, where they're that close to each other, hollering at each other, changing words and phrases and things like that. So for me, those two pieces of creeds, even though they were part of our church life, had really no impact on me like a new creed has. Because when I looked at this and I'm like, wow, like that I can sink my teeth into. That speaks to me. And then when I began to find out, as we've been saying, that, you know, these statements of faith has come as the church has grown. And which always made me feel challenged as to how do I grow continually as a church minister. You know, so by looking at this creed, there are different parts of that which continue to challenge me in how I live my life. And so when bringing it into our confirmation group, one of the things that we would always do is we would do a session on this. But one of the things I would invite the young people to do was to write their own creed. Like, tell me what do you believe? You know, about God, about church, about the Spirit, about community, about being into the world. What is it, you know, because we can pray this prayer but what is it that you believe? Because it's important for us as a church to understand what you believe in also. And so it always and they always jumped in and wrote a creeds, and for the most part gave us permission to publish them as part of our order of service with the rest of the community. So it became not something that was stagnant, but something that was calling us to always look at our faith journey of where we are and where God was still calling us to. So I've really appreciated this. And I always finding a new creed, you know, 54 years old.
Yeah, I keep wondering when we're going to change it to just the creed of the United Church.
But
Well, compared to the old creeds, it's still pretty new.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
the thing is,
Can I tell you a story? Sorry, Wanda, you go ahead.
Okay. No, I was just going to say it's not the creed, it's a new
Yeah.
creed, which I think is a really important distinction.
That's very good.
Yeah.
Jeff, you got me thinking about telling a story of this past September. So along the lines in our pandemic online video worships, I reprised a sermon from days ago that had actually been really influenced by an article, a small column in the United Church Observer in 2017, when it was the Observer. And it was something that struck me more than other things. And it was written by Antonio Galtieri, who taught at Carleton, a United Church minister who taught religious studies at Carleton. And the article said, there's no verb form in English to correspond with the word faith. Belief is an intellectual proposition in English. And very briefly in this brief article, he related the equivalent word in other tongues that English writers of the Bible, whatever, used. They resorted to the word believe because there wasn't another one. But if you say the equivalent word in German, it's Liebe. Ich liebe dich. It's love. It's beloved. It's something. So if I was going to sing a German art song to my beloved, it would be Ich liebe dich. It would be Schubert, and it would be beautiful. Not my singing of it, but the song is beautiful. So September, the kids are in school. I've got the first 6 hours on my own in the house, and I think I want to talk to Antonio Galtieri and say, where did he get the problem between faith and belief in English? So how would I get his? I Googled his name in Ottawa, nothing, and just it happened on the sideboard in the kitchen was the United Church yearbook. So I cold called Professor Emeritus Antonio Galtieri, and I explained who I was, and he was astonished to get a call from a living, breathing, working United Church minister. It was a wonderful chat. He's in his 90s now, and I moved around to where did this idea come from, and he said, "Oh, that's Wilford Cantwell Smith, United Church theologian who taught at Harvard, and Evelyn, he taught Cliff Hospital, and so we studied, and he was a world ecumenist."
Yep.
So I sent away Faith and Belief, the work by Wilford Cantwell Smith. It had to come from England, from a used bookstore in England, because long not in print. But that you start talking about what do you love instead of what do you believe? Because a lot of people can say, I love God, who can't say, I believe in God. What do you cherish? So, and I've had conversations with people on the dock. Oh, I don't believe in all that church stuff, but I love God. I love justice. I love these ideas, but I don't believe in all those things we don't believe in. The old man in the sky, right? And so it's interesting to connect with people by changing the verb that has something to do with putting our trust in or our faith in, rather than intellectual propositions that nobody can prove anyway. So it's been a point of connection, and these things, like today, to seek justice and resist evil, it's part of my spiritual DNA, these concepts, which need to be tempered by God being my judge and my hope. Because I'm thinking some things about Russia that I need forgiveness for, but the things I'm thinking come out of that search for justice and resisting evil, and how far do we go to resist evil, and to love and serve others, all that. My brother, who's not a church guy, but just happened to have moved in the past months into my pastoral orbit, called me up and he said, I've got a group of people who want to sponsor Ukrainians to come to Canada. How do I do that? I've been thinking the same thing. Whether he acknowledges or not, he's got some of the same spiritual DNA, because it's bone deep for people who worship in our tradition.
How do your folks react when you use a new creed? Is there any reaction? Is it just kind of a, oh, here we go. Okay, yeah, we're going to believe, or we are not alone. Or are there instances where you can think of where maybe there have been deep connections or comments from folks about the use of this?
I joined 3 other women to quilt once a week, and the minister who was here with Nobleton and Schaumburg United, she would encourage everyone to be saying a new creed. Thanks for that correction, Wanda, because I've always said that new creed, so now I need to remember that. And one of the women has said how much this creed comforts her and challenges her, and that it's an important statement for her. And she appreciates when we say it. So, and then I've had other parishioners in previous congregations who want to know why we're not saying the Apostles' Creed. And I just smile sweetly and say, because it's not the United Church Creed. And would you like coffee now?
This past Sunday, we're saying the creed each of the 5 Sundays, and we have been remaining seated during our service just because we're not quite sure with all what we're supposed to be doing. So I just tell folks, well, just remain seated, because I think that if they do that, there's less chance they're going to reach out to grab each other and try to shake hands and all that. But when we started a new creed, one of the older members of our congregation stood straight up to say the creed. And for her, you do not sit down when you say the creed.
Amen.
And I just thought, like, man, I think I could do a sermon just on that, standing up, like for, there's something about, you're putting yourself out there, as she did when she stood up, which might make others go, I wonder why it's so important for her to stand during this. And what does that mean? What deeper meaning is there within that? I haven't had a chance to chat with her about that, but I will. So that was just one of the instances that really stood out for me.
So to speak.
Is that Wanda?
I just said so to speak, or no pun intended, because you said whatever.
Yeah.
I've never had anybody complain about having to say a new creed, and most people have their heads out of the books when they say it. I'm the one who has to read it, and everybody else has it memorized. And I find it to be it's a little bit, it's like a special Lord's Prayer almost. It's something that we can all do together, and we have so few rituals in the United Church, and I can understand why that person would stand, because there's other churches where there's all kinds of opportunities to stand, and we stand to sing, but to say these words and stand, there's something very noble about it, and something very noble and humble at the same time, and really honoring. We don't have a whole lot of opportunities to do that with our typical liturgy, so it's cool. It's a great. I just love the creed. Creed, a new creed.
One of the things that the church I served at in Mississauga, Eden United, when they started using the screen, the office administrator there, who is Wanda's office administrator, Pamela Maloney.
Ooh.
Yeah, nice connection. She started finding different images and photos to go with the words, the phrases. And that really makes an impact. And so I know we're going to be saying this on Easter Sunday, and I'm starting to find some images to go with it. So it's not just the words like we're seeing right here. Because then for me, people can see how the creed is indeed lived out.
Sorry.
No, I just
go ahead, Wanda.
we talked. Oh, Michelle, I've talked more than you. You talk.
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
Well, mine might steer us in a different direction. If you were
Okay,
responding to Evelyn, you
sure.
go. Okay.
Sure. No, I was just thinking, Jeff, as you were, when you sent out this invitation, I was reminded of a pastoral time I had with an elderly person in a previous congregation. And they were in the hospital. They were in their 90s. And she was recounting to me how she knew it was her time, and had told me a story about when she was about 20 years younger, and people were convinced she was going to die, and she saw Jesus, and Jesus said, no, you've still got work to do. And the work turned out to be raising her grandchildren. And she knew that her grandchildren were older now, and that this truly was the time. And the most amazing, profound thing happened. She started to recite the creed. And of course, I needed to like scroll on my phone and Google a new creed so I could like know what she, make sure we were saying it right or whatever. And so the profound part was that, one, she knew it. Like it was in her soul.
Part of her DNA.
But as she said it, she used it to reflect on her life. So she said, I am not alone. And she named a couple of times when she didn't feel alone. I live in God's world. And she talked about what that meant. And we went through every single line. And she spoke about how it spoke to her, how it resonated with her life and her faith journey and her soul. And by the end of it, I'm weeping and I'm thinking, I'm not being so pastoral here. We did a prayer, and I left just feeling like I was in the midst of the most holiest of holies. And I got down to my car, and she was in a large hospital. She was in the Barrie Hospital. And so she was up on the 5th floor, I believe, or 6th floor. I got down to my car, and just as I got into my car, her granddaughter called and said that she had just gotten a call from the nurse that grandma had passed.
Wow.
And I felt so full of the Spirit. Like, honestly, I felt ministered to, because this was a woman who had so much significance in the community. And it was just, she gave me a gift. And I thought, wow. So I actually sat in my car and wrote down as much of what she had said that I could remember. And it formed the basis of the words of remembrance and the reflection for her funeral. And I had people coming to me afterwards saying that for them, it made it personal, because up until then, it had just been words that they needed to recite that they hadn't given thought to. And so this woman, in her death, was able to profoundly make this real for an entire congregation and for a minister, which I just continue to offer gratitude for Betty's life. She is one of those saints in my life and my ministry.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's such a powerful story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those stories are the reason we get into ministry.
You know, Wanda, amen to that. You are right. Yeah.
Yeah, as opposed to the ones who say, and why aren't we saying the Nicene Creed?
Exactly. Exactly.
I don't have enough fingers for the Nicene Creed.
Yeah, Wanda, you wanted to add in something
Yeah,
else?
sorry, Wanda.
Oh no, it's a totally different tangent, and it's really a question, because I know it's been adapted a few times, this creed has, but I wonder if it will be again now that we have a song of faith. I wonder if a song of faith is now the faith statement for this generation, and it's not a relic. It's obviously completely relevant, and it's so short, it's so easy to use, but I wonder if it will ever change now.
I don't think the Song of Faith is nearly as rooted in the church as a new creed. And yes, I'm the same as it's the creed, right? No, it's a new creed. I don't think it's rooted the same. And I think I think its functionality is different because it's so long. It's a beautiful piece of writing, but it's really long. And you may use pieces of that in a liturgical setting, but you're not going to use the whole thing. This is to me, this is our liturgy. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's changed in the future. I don't know what, I don't know what that would look like or how it would happen, but I think at some point it will be.
Yeah. Thank you.
That will be an interesting journey for whoever is taking it at the time. And I like that you point out it's a new creed because there could be an even newer creed. Just as there's a song of faith, I think it's also called a song of faith rather than the song of faith because there are other songs of faith, and many of those songs are in harmony with the ones that we sing already. And you mentioned, Chris, how this is our liturgy. In 2018, I believe it was, that the previous General Council met, and Richard became our moderator, and I became aware in August of 2018 of a communion liturgy that he wrote based on this creed, that incorporates this creed, and I appreciate that and have adopted it a little bit, adapted it a little bit for my accent, I'll say. And have used it, and people really connected with that as well. And I don't know where the original or his original would be, but I can tell you where if anyone wants it, I will send it out. So that was first used by me on the first Sunday we were back in August of 2018 after that General Council. And Richard is somewhat of a spinner of interesting webs with words.
Yes.
It's a great gift for that.
Mm-hmm.
So, coming to the end of our time together, are there any final thoughts about a new creed?
Just that I'm looking forward to seeing your editing job on this.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just gonna hit stop and then I'm gonna hit post.
Oh,
Yeah. That sounds like minimal editing to me.
it does.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that whenever I consider a new creed, whether it's repeating it with others or by myself, I'm never left with a sense that, oh, I'm done now. It always leaves me with mission, and the realization that it's not something that I accomplish by myself. Because we may say we are not alone in the sense that God is with us, but we are not alone in the sense that all our church is with us and beyond. And I do my best to remind people that in ways that other creeds mention specifically by name, I'd be happy if all I need from the Apostles' Creed is I believe in the communion of saints. Because that's the statement in the Apostles' Creed or the Nicene Creed that we're not alone in terms of others on the journey with us. Some prodding us from behind and some beckoning from ahead, and some in line abreast.
Jeff, I think for a lot of folks in previous generations that I sit with pastorally, it's the 23rd Psalm that speaks to them. And I would say that a new creed has become that touchstone for me. I know that when ministry gets overwhelming and life gets overwhelming, it tends to be this that I go to read. And Don, I think a lot of it is just knowing that it isn't just my call. It's not just my community of faith's call, that it's our collective call. And knowing that we are in this together, that God is with us in it. I never read this without feeling more hopeful at the end of it. And so in some ways it becomes the thing that grounds me in my faith, grounds me in who I am and what it is I'm called to be in community and relationship with others and with God. And that for me is just, it's a really important piece of my faith journey.
I'm a huge Holy Week nut. I live and breathe Holy Week and all of the various liturgies. I have ever since I started in ministry. And for me, the first part up to the end of our Judge and our Hope is all of the our life of discipleship, but wrapped up in life and death and life beyond death. That's the Easter story for me. That's the Holy Week story. And so there's a huge, I think that's why this speaks to me, because the Holy Week story is lived out in life and death and life beyond death in all of these words that precede that line. And that I can't do this on my own. I won't make it through COVID alone. I won't make it, trying to figure out where we go next alone. With God, with the wonderful community, with colleagues such as yourself, we're intertwined in this journey. And so I'm grateful for that and challenged by that.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to reflect together as well.
Yeah, thank you.
So maybe can we finish? Maybe Evelyn, would you read a new creed for us?
Why don't we all, oh, no, on Zoom you can't really do that.
Oh, it's so much fun. Cacophony.
Yes.
Well,
we sound like the Ford.
Maybe because for each one of us, a new creed takes us into different places.
Yeah.
But in the end, we're not alone in saying it. So together, let's say, we are
not alone. We live in God's world. We believe in God, who has created
and is creating,
who
has come in Jesus, the Word made flesh,
to
reconcile and make
new,
who
works in us and others
by the
by
Spirit.
the
Spirit.
We trust in God. We
are
are
called to be
the
church,
to
celebrate God's presence,
to
live
with respect and
in
creation,
to
love and serve others,
to seek
justice and resist evil,
to
proclaim
Jesus
crucified
and risen,
our
judge
and
and
our
our hope,
in
life,
in
in
death,
death,
in
life
life
beyond
beyond
death.
God
God
is
is
with
with us.
We
We
are
not
alone.
alone.
Thanks
be
to
to God.
And so thank you all for joining me today and for sharing your wisdom and your experience and your stories. And I hope those who will be watching this will find a time to reflect on what a new creed means to you in your own journey. And so I'm going to try to find a way. There we are, the stop recording button. So thanks, everyone. And thanks for joining us on
Thank
this
you.
journey of a new creed. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks,
Blessings
Thanks,
to you
Jeff.
all.
Honor.